I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly, I'm going to read your notice too for the change of the time of the meeting first.
Thank you.
Members of the town board, change start time of March 7th, 2024 work session. Please be advised that the work session of Thursday, March 7th, 2024, currently noticed for 10:30 a.m. will instead begin at 10 a.m. Supervisor Moore,
Present.
Councilwoman McNamara,
Present.
Councilman Iacilli, Councilman Pell,
Present.
Councilman Schiavone.
Present.
Okay, let's proceed with the review of the draft agenda. There is a walk-on that I'm sure Councilman Pell will explain to us at the time, but just to determine if we add it. You do? You only have one.
I only signed one.
This one is for the home, number
No,
45735.
That's in there.
Oh,
That's
there's
in the
changes?
packet.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one that Tatiana just changed.
Oh, okay. I guess that's
The Home Rule Request Resolution in support of A 1531 and Senate 2156 as it relates to the continued authority of the trustees of the freeholders and commonality of the town of Southampton in relation to ocean beaches. I move to add this to the draft agenda.
You don't
It's a
have to.
walk-on.
You don't have to. You just say you're gonna add it to the agenda.
Right.
Bill,
This is gonna be an add-on.
even though Bill is sponsoring it, I'm adding it. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Oh, we had to vote like with a
With a
supermajority
walk-on.
to add a.
Walk-on.
Like, right now, it's still an add-on, so we're just reviewing the draft of the agenda. We haven't put the final agenda together yet.
All right,
If he did this on Tuesday,
Tuesday,
then we'd be
we'd need
doing
the-
the walk-on and the,
okay. All right.
This is in relation to the easement.
Yeah, that's,
Is this has to be reauthorized?
No,
I know
this
we
is-
did this a couple years ago.
This
Yeah.
is, we
Yeah.
have to, I think we need a legal opinion on this because we didn't do it last year for reasons having to do with FIMP, so.
what do you think?
I
Okay,
think we need to
it
have a
sounds like
conversation.
there's a little bit more to this, is that?
Yes.
What do you think?
Because we,
I just think we need to have a legal discussion about it.
I'm not doing the FIMP portion, so Jim would have to weigh in on
Okay.
that. I didn't look into that relative to this.
I'm sure that the federal government is working with the trustees.
Yeah.
You know, they have the easement on the, on our beaches.
And this is mainly also when they opened the inlet at Cox and Sag. This is one of the main
Well-
reasons too.
Okay, and I guess my question is, and this may not be a now thing, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we passed a similar resolution, you know, to supporting and strengthening the trustees' easement along the beach. You know, and
It was different.
this is different.
No, it was the same one, except it had, because I did look, it had the villages all included. This does not include the villages.
I mean, we don't even have the
But
copy
I
of
would
it.
like
Okay,
to,
well-
I would like Bill and Michael to have the benefit of and also the supervisor to have the benefit of the conversation that we had, the legal advice that we were given on this, so. If we could hold it until the next meeting, that would be great.
Is there a time restraint on it or constraint for any
I
reason?
don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think it was not marked urgent when it was given to me.
I mean, you know, relating to the continued authority of the trustees and
Yeah.
freeholders of
It's mainly-
commonality
Something we support,
in
we
relation to
just-
ocean beaches, you
Yeah,
know.
it's mainly for the opening and closing, but on the beach.
Okay.
It's not
well,
clear from this whether the villages are
Yeah.
included, so would
No.
we get
Me-
advice in executive session?
I thought we
from
did
the
that.
work session?
Jim
That's
knows
fine.
about it, so he'll.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to add it, you can still add it on and then just table it, or you can not, you can wait, it's up to you.
Maybe we just, we'll table it. You know, keep it on, then we'll table
Just
it.
table
Because we can maybe talk to Jim
Yeah.
ahead of time.
That's
Okay.
fine.
Not yet, but it's working towards it.
More confusing for you.
Okay,
Bill has the first one.
all right.
Town Board Resolution 45761, authorize maintenance and roofs and gutter system from Statewide Roof, Inc., using Suffolk County Water Authority contract.
45764, authorize pushing asphalt and materials, sandstone and agar, topsoil, mulch, disposal of road metals used by Suffolk County contracts.
Town Board Resolution ID number 45695, to authorize the purchase of bus shelter supply and installation from PSL Industries, Inc., using Suffolk County contract. Town Board Resolution ID number 45750, to authorize purchases of construction equipment and dredging services from H&L Contracting LLC and Laser Industries, Inc., using Suffolk County contract.
Janice, could you add me as co-sponsor for that, please? As trustees.
Yes.
Or Sunday, sorry.
That's okay.
Town Board Resolution ID number
thought you were freezing over there.
45775, to authorize purchases of electric vehicle supply equipment and related services using Sourcewell contract with ChargePoint, Inc.
Sunday, could I be added as a co-sponsor, please? Thank you.
I would like two Sunday, too.
Town Board Resolution ID number 45763, authorize purchases of HVAC and air conditioning service and new installation from Commercial Instrumentation Services using Suffolk County contract. Town Board,
Sunday, could you add it again, please? Trying to keep
Town Board
the heat going.
Resolution 45693, to authorize purchases of plumbing supplies from Central Islip Plumbing, Ferguson Waterworks, Island Replacement Parts, T. Mina Supply LLC, and Sid Tool Company Incorporated, DBA MSC Industrial Supply Company, using Suffolk County contract. Town Board Resolution ID number 45755, to authorize purchases of welding, fabrication, and repairs using Suffolk County contract with Retrofit, Inc.
Town Board Resolution ID 45828, co-sponsored by Councilman Iacilli, authorize supervisor to execute an amended contract with L.K. McLean Associates, P.C., to provide professional services for Tiana Beach Pavilion.
There's just some typos in there,
Oh,
if you wanna just either
not this.
and amend a contract or and amend a
Can you
contract.
add me to that, too, please?
That's it? Okay, we need to just
Okay.
stop for just a moment.
In the
Because
ti-
Okay.
did you want to be added to something, Maria? I couldn't hear. You
No.
were speaking to Cindy. Okay, Bill, which one is it that you want to be added to?
Oh, and to provide.
45828.
Got it.
One or the other.
And there's a typo in the heading. The word, authorize supervisor to execute and should be and.
On 45828?
Yes,
Says that.
and
in the title.
To execute and amend,
Oh.
and amended contract, gotcha. Okay.
Are we good to go?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
45826, co-sponsor with Councilman Iacilli, authorize the supervisor to extend a contract with Long Island Housing Partnership to provide technical assistance for attainable housing programs. 45796, authorize the purchase of a Chevrolet Silverado 1500 Crew LT four-wheel drive from Buzz Chew Chevrolet Cadillac Incorporated using the New York State OGS contract for vehicles Class 1B statewide. Town Board Resolution 45819, also co-sponsored with Councilman Iacilli, authorize the sale of a community benefit unit located at 1102 Erie Way in East Quogue. Am I saying that right? I know where. I know exactly where it is. Okay, thank you. Town Board Resolution 45808, authorize the supervisor to execute a service order with Box Incorporated for Business Plus account licenses.
Town Board Resolution ID number 45806, co-sponsored with Councilman Scavone, authorizing the supervisor to sign 2024 agreement with Penflex, Inc. for the Defined Benefit Service Award Program.
Town Board Resolution ID 45762, authorize the supervisor to execute a 2024 contract with Oliver Packaging and Equipment Company as sole source provider of complete system packaging trays for senior services.
Town Board Resolution ID 45829, authorize the supervisor to execute an agreement with Robert Smith of Hawkins, Delafield and Wood LLP as bond counsel for the Riverside Sewer District.
Cindy, can you add me that too, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ray, you're the next one.
Town Board Resolution ID 45807, authorize the supervisor to execute an agreement with Baseline Health Management LLC to provide comprehensive health physicals. And you'll see that there's also another page revising this to reflect
Do you
the
have that, Cindy?
changes are at
Say
no
it
Do you have the
cost.
changes?
I do, yes.
Just to reflect that there's no annual cost to the town and no financial impact from the contract. Town Board Resolution ID 45774, to authorize the supervisor to execute an amended contract with AVA Design, Inc. for the architectural design, engineering services, as well as construction management of a proposed ambulance facility at 1256 North Sea Road in Southampton.
Cindy, would you add me as a co-sponsor?
Yes.
Thank you. Town Board Resolution 45766, co-sponsored with Councilman Yaselli, to authorize the supervisor to sign a contract amendment with Easton Architects LLP for architectural and engineering services for Tupper Boathouse.
Cindy, can you add me that, please?
Yes.
Town Board Resolution ID 45771, authorize the supervisor to sign a contract extension with LK McLean Associates PC for professional services associated with Reeves Bay Nature Trail and Catwalk.
Please add me as a co-sponsor to that.
And myself too.
This is an exciting one. We've been on it for years.
Okay.
Thank you. Town Board Resolution 45625, authorize supervisor to sign sole source contract with Old Dominic Bush Company for Dominic Bush Company OEM parts.
Town Board Resolution 45827, co-sponsored with Councilman Yaselli, authorize the supervisor to sign an intermunicipal agreement with certain villages to participate in the Community Housing Fund pursuant to Town Code, Chapter 140.
Town Board Resolution ID 45772, co-sponsored with Councilman Iacilli. Authorize the supervisor to sign a one-year extension with LMJ ENT LLC DBA, a Sandcastle Cafe for Tiana Beach concession for the 2024 summer season.
Town Board Resolution ID number 45776, to declare items surplus and authorize disposal of vehicles and equipment. Town Board Resolution ID number 45715, 2024 notice to bidders for lumber and paint. Town Board Resolution ID number 45697, 2024 notice to bidders for Town Hall electric vehicle charging stations.
Cindy, would you add me as a co-sponsor? And
And myself too, please. Trust Town Board Resolution 45668, 2024, notice to bidders for Yacht Club Drive bulkhead replacement.
Town Board Resolution ID number 45824, to amend the 2023 budget for various departments. Interdepartmental budget transfers. Town Board Resolution ID number 45813, to amend the 2024 adopted budget for building and zoning part-time salaries. Town Board Resolution ID number 45815, to authorize the purchase order encumbrances 2023 to 2024. Town Board Resolution ID number 45728, accept the resignation of Robert I. Ross from the Public Safety Commission. And Town Board Resolution ID number 45727, to reappoint Robert Edel to the Public Safety Commission. Town Board Resolution ID number 45768, continuation of legal services by Sertleman, Balin, Adler, and Hyman LLP as it relates to Rose Hill Road, Watermill, New York, for 2024. Town Board Resolution ID number 45767, continuation of legal services by Vince Toomey Esquire for 2024.
Town Board Resolution ID 45831, co-sponsored by Councilman Iacilli, authorization of cost reimbursement waiver for the Blaze Church Spring into Easter 2024 to be held on March 23rd, 2024, from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m.
Town Board Resolution 45837, co-sponsored with McNamara, Moore, Scrivoni, and Izzo. Authorize this Southampton Town Police Department Personal Take Explorer program, particular to the 911 memorial in New York City.
Town Board Resolution ID number 45802, to recall and amend Resolution number 2024-20, set Town Board work session schedule for 2024, so that our work session meetings can begin at 10.
Town Board Resolution ID 45809, co-sponsored with Councilman Iacilli, waive portable storage fee for Hampton Bays Fire Department Annual Carnival. Portable stage, I'm sorry. Town Board Resolution ID 45747, co-sponsored with Councilman Iacilli, 2024 junkyard permits.
Town Board Resolution ID number 45711, 2024 part-time salaries. Town Board Resolution ID 44980, to accept the retirement of Philip Tachi Jr., groundskeeper 3 in the Parks Department. Town Board Resolution ID number 45812, to appoint Allison Stout to Public Safety Dispatcher 1 in the Police Department. Town Board Resolution ID number 45814, to appoint Ashley Bureau to Public Safety Dispatcher 1 in the Police Department. Town Board Resolution ID number 45810, to appoint Brandon Drummond to Network and System Specialist in Information Technology. And Town Board Resolution ID number 45821, to appoint Dawn Kuzak to Senior Office Assistant in Land Management. And Town Board Resolution ID number 45816, to appoint Douglas Rollo to Public Safety Dispatcher 1 in the Police Department. Town Board Resolution ID 45830, to appoint James Edmond to Scale Operator in Waste Management. Town Board Resolution ID number 45820, to appoint James Trent III to Groundskeeper 2 in the Parks Department. It's nice getting a lot of new employees on.
Town Board Resolution ID 45825, co-sponsored with Councilman Iacilli and Supervisor Moore. Notice of public hearing to consider terminating the Hampton Bays Waterfront Revitalization Urban Renewal Plan as it relates to the property located at 20 Shinnecock Road, Hampton Bays.
You can add to the Sunday too.
That public hearing will be March 26th at 6 p.m.
I'm not going to be added on because I actually voted for this, but I do support this resolution.
Thank you.
Town Board Resolution 45734, notice of public hearing, Chapter 261, considering enforcement action on 188 West Neck Road, Tuckahoe, New York, 11968, 900-111-12-10.
Madam Clerk, I'd like to co-sponsor that.
That should probably be a full board resolution. So put everybody on it.
Everybody's
Like, can you add the four that are, the three that are here?
I think
Yes, I'd like to co-sponsor.
Councilman Pell reached out to Councilman Iacilli on it.
Yeah, I have not spoken to him
Oh,
on it
okay.
yet.
Oh, okay.
I thought he was gonna be
But he
here
can be
tonight.
added at the town
Yeah,
board too.
All right.
because normally we do them as a full board.
And the public hearing for that is April 9th.
Town Board Resolution ID 45773, Resolution setting a public hearing to consider amending Town Code Chapter 330-185 as it relates to the procedure for change of zone applications. For the board, there was a work session on this, December 8th, 2022. If you have the time to watch that, and if you have any questions, Kathleen Murray or
Oh, this
myself.
is the, you're reintroducing the re-elect to consider that, to add another step to the process?
It's basically to allow the full board to decide if something gets put on for a work session for an elect to consider. The
So we're
former
electing to
supervisor-
consider an elect to consider.
It's no,
That
it's.
that was my
it's-
opposition to it, you know.
Okay.
But we'll take a look at it, of
Do
course.
you wanna do another work session?
We can do another work
Yeah.
session between now, because it doesn't
I
have a
think the
public
new
hearing
board would need one,
until
yeah.
April,
April 26th.
Should do another work session.
April 9th
April
is
9th.
down for. We're gonna have a work session before then.
We have a few
Okay.
before then, if we want to
Yeah.
add this.
I'd like to do that. I'll watch that meeting from the 8th. I think I saw it already, and I remember when you introduced it, and it seems to me to be something that I'd want to support, but it's very lengthy, and I want to have an opportunity to read it.
Sure.
since I just got it and review the prior meeting, so,
Mhm.
And it would be up
Janice-
to you to put it on for a work session, so. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I like streamlining the steps that we have rather than adding another step. That's how I see this, but we'll discuss it at the. Town Board Resolution 45701, authorize the acquisition of 38 Second Neck, also co-sponsored with Councilwoman McNamara, to authorize the acquisition of 38 Second Neck Lane located in the village of Quogue, and to amend CPF project plan and CPF management plan and stewardship plan to include the property. Town Board Resolution 45702, also co-sponsored with Councilwoman McNamara, to consider the acquisition of 42nd Neck Lane located in the village of Quogue and amend the CPF project plan and CPF management plan and stewardship plan to include the property.
There's just one thing. This says to consider the acquisition. Did
right.
already have the public hearing, so I would suggest we change the word consider to authorize. We've done that before on other, and the same change for the next one.
Okay. Okay, we don't need to vote on that, right, Cindy? We can just take the word consider out and
That's why we
replace it
have a
with
draft review. We don't vote on.
authorize, no, just
Excellent.
double checking. Okay, Town Board Resolution 45703, co-sponsored with Councilwoman McNamara, Councilman Pell, to consider the acquisition of 710 North McGee Street in the hamlet of North Sea, and to amend the CPF management and stewardship plan to include the property. Let's change that word consider to authorize the acquisition as well.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you, great.
Thank you.
All right, now we have, in 1 minute ahead of schedule, a presentation by our special counsel on ethics matters, Stephen Leventhal, and our own Kathleen Murray's here as well. And they're gonna talk to us about changes, revisions, freshening up our ethics code.
Morning.
Thank you, Cindy.
My pleasure.
Thank you all for meeting with me this morning. It has been my privilege to serve as ethics counsel to the town for 17 years. It's hard to imagine that. I'm also ethics counsel to the County of Westchester, the County of Nassau, the town of Hempstead, the town of Oyster Bay, the town of Huntington, the village of Port Jefferson, and the village of Sag Harbor. And all of those municipalities, except Nassau County, have adopted the code that's proposed before you, with slight local variations. The goals of the ethics program are two. The first is to inspire public confidence in town government by ensuring not only the reality of integrity in government, but also its appearance. And the second goal stems from the fact, supported by, forgive me, I have a slight cold, supported by both logic and experience, that the overwhelming majority of town employees are honest and truly intend to do the right thing. So the second goal of the program is to provide them with clear guidance and to help them avoid unintended ethics violations before they occur. There is an enforcement component to the program, but that is by far a lesser priority for the ethics board than education, advice, and other steps that will help the honest town workforce to understand what their obligations are. There are other agencies that are primarily charged with rooting out evildoers and bringing them to justice, the district attorney's office primarily. But while that is a component to the program, as I say, it's a lesser priority. So over the years, the Board of Ethics, which has really done a wonderful job throughout the years, with the assistance of Kathleen, of course, has, in implementing the Code of Ethics, has recognized certain deficiencies in it. It was adopted in 2003, and it was a good effort. It's not a bad code, but but a Code of Ethics should be viewed as a work in progress. It should be reviewed periodically. It should be modernized. It should fit the needs of the municipality. One deficiency in this code, in my view, is that it is overloaded with definitions. I think that definitions in a law or regulation often are a trap for the unwary. Words in a law or a regulation should, to the greatest extent possible, have their plain English meaning so that the text of the law can be understood. And where a definition is required, to the greatest extent possible, the definition should appear in context. Furthermore, words should not be tortured with meanings that would not be apparent to a person of normal understanding and intelligence. For example, you should not define the word relative to include members of your household. A relative is one species of animal, a member of the household is another. If you want to include members of household in a regulation along with relatives, you should say relatives and members of your household. As originally enacted, this code made any violation a crime. It was a misdemeanor. That was a very bad, in my view, that was a drafting error back in 2003, because whenever a board that I represent suspects that there might be criminality, my advice is do nothing, refer it to the DA's office. Any action that you take might either compromise the prosecution on the one hand or deprive the defendant of their Fifth Amendment privileges or other procedural rights. So having every violation of the code represent a misdemeanor really paralyzed the board from conducting investigations. There are areas in which the code, in my view, is overly strict, such as prohibiting the employers of board members from appearing before the board. If an employer of a board member appears, unless there's some other factor or circumstances that would make a recusal by that board member an inadequate cure to that conflict, the appearance should not be prohibited. If a member of a board has to frequently and inevitably recuse themselves because their employer is often appearing before the board, that's a different matter. Or if the board member's compensation with their employer is somehow connected to the matter that the employer is appearing on, that's a problem. But an ethics code should be tailored to address the problems, not use such a broad brush as to throw out the baby with the bathwater. And you know, it's difficult enough to find citizens with the time and inclination and desire to serve on town boards. You don't want to make it more difficult by imposing those kinds of unnecessary restrictions. So those are just a few examples. We did not, this proposed revision to the code is a long-term project by the Board of Ethics. We did not start with the current code and look for ways to change it. We started with a blank page. And in the state of New York, the starting point is, for any discussion of ethics, municipal ethics, is Article 18 of the New York General Municipal Law, which is a law of statewide application that includes a code of conduct for municipal employees. The only municipality in the state of New York that is excluded from its coverage is New York City. And the reason for that is they have an ethics program that is a model for the world. It's really the leading municipal ethics program in the world. But otherwise, every town, every city, every village, every special district is covered by Article 18. So when a local municipality like this town drafts its own local code of ethics, which is authorized to do by Article 18, it's my advice to start by incorporating all of the provisions of that state law. The reason for that is you don't want a town officer or employee to look at the local code of ethics, think that it represents all of the regulations that they're obliged to comply with, without realizing that there's also a state law that regulates their conduct. So we want to have one-stop shopping, and that is achieved with this code. We also took a look at the comptroller's model code of ethics, which was a useful exercise to look at the comptroller's code. This is a more comprehensive code than the one that the comptroller has promulgated years ago. And there are also publications by the bar associations, municipal organizations like the Association of Towns, scholarly writings, law review articles, and we drew from that. And also, I should say, from judicial decisions that have been rendered over the past several decades that have established common law principles of government ethics. So this code has certain virtues. It's organized in a clear way. There are three principal articles: the code of conduct, a section that includes all of the disclosure requirements, and then a third section that has the administrative provisions, such as the powers and duties of the Board of Ethics. It is clear and comprehensive to the greatest extent possible. It's written in plain English, although sometimes complex thoughts require more words than you would ideally prefer that a law used to express them, but sometimes it's necessary. And as I said, it incorporates Article 18. Now, if the board, after reviewing this proposal, decides that it will adopt it, or adopt it as it chooses to modify the proposal, that is the first step in organizing a effective, robust ethics program. The second step is to prepare a document that looks like this. This is the one that we've prepared for the town of Huntington. It is a booklet that includes, as you can see, all of the municipalities that I represent have done the same.
Can I see one, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
The booklet begins with a plain language guide. And that is because an ethics regulation is useless if it's not understood by the people who must comply with it. So we try to assist the officers and employees of the town by preparing a plain language guide that appears in the front of the booklet, with the statement, of course, that the plain language guide is just that. It's a guide. It's not the law itself. So what follows in the booklet is the portions of the ethics code that include the code of conduct and the disclosure requirements, other than the annual financial disclosure requirement, because that really is not the sort of thing that you need to refer to on an ongoing basis. The next step, sure.
Thank you.
Sure. The next step, in my view, is to roll out a training program. This is really essential. Recently, the number of requests for ethics advice that the Board of Ethics has been receiving has dwindled a bit. We used to get them frequently. If an ethics board is not getting requests for advice, it isn't because people aren't encountering ethics issues on a daily basis. It's that they're not realizing that they are. If the ethics board gets the word out, that will produce inquiries, and that's what we're trying to achieve. And I might also say that a few years ago, the state comptroller conducted a statewide audit of a sampling of municipalities' ethics programs, and one of the municipalities selected was this town. And one of the comments made by the comptroller was a note that there had not been recent training, ethics training. So it really is something that we need to renew. And ethics training should be conducted periodically. One of the virtues of the booklet, of course, is that it can be given to a new hire. It can be, the ethics board itself can use this as a useful resource.
Who provides the training?
I did.
You would
Yes.
come and meet with the board?
Well, not with the board, but with the officers and employees of the town. We
Oh.
schedule several sessions and organize it in a way that's convenient for the town, and we conduct the training. Do you remember the facility that we used? It was a club of some sort, I think.
I think so, yeah. We could also use, like, we've used the Hampton Bays ambulance building or fire
Mhm.
department for like, same space we used for like department head meetings years ago.
There's also the senior center that the
Yeah.
Board of Ethics meets in.
Yeah.
But
And-
is there training for the board members also?
Oh, yes, absolutely, absolutely, definitely.
Land
And,
use boards.
Or
this
like
board.
me, you go to Kathleen with all of your questions.
well, that is a very good place to go for advice.
But our land use boards, who may not have that option, right, we could offer training for them as well.
Absolutely, and what I
Okay.
usually recommend is one or more training programs during the day for employees who are actually on site for their workday,
Good.
and another training or more in the evening for members of boards and commissions who aren't, who don't work here during the day. The final step in establishing what I think is a well-designed, robust ethics program is to develop a useful website. The website should have the code of ethics. There should be a link on the town's website to a page for the Board of Ethics, where someone can click on the booklet, they can click on other materials that the Board of Ethics has prepared, useful materials. For example, in other municipalities, around holiday time, when people are at greater risk of accepting inappropriate gifts, we have developed a one-topic flyer, a plain language guide for accepting gifts and favors, frequently asked questions, a form for requesting ethics advice, a form for filing an ethics complaint, and other useful materials, the financial disclosure form and instructions. And really, the Board of Ethics can publish notice of its meetings, it can publish the minutes of its public sessions, and even ideally, where possible, the confidentiality of ethics advice is critically important. The reason ethics advice is confidential is because we want to encourage people to seek advice. And if it's not confidential, people are less likely to seek advice. But ethics opinions can sometimes be redacted to conceal the identity of the person who made the request. Now, if the request comes from the supervisor, and there's only one supervisor, and it's necessary in the opinion to discuss the fact that the person making the request holds the office of supervisor, Well, that's obviously an opinion that cannot be redacted to conceal the identity of the person who made the request. In that case, we would only publish it with the consent of the person who sought the advice. But that's a useful thing to do also. So those are the components of the program. Now, I'm more than happy if the board wishes to walk through the proposal with you. And I have prepared, and I hope that you have, an annotated version of it. The annotations are just comment. Sometimes I note where we have deviated from the existing code. Sometimes I've noted the source of the regulation or other information I thought might be useful to you. But I guess we can start with page 3, section 23-2 are the definitions. The current code of ethics has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 3.5 pages of definitions. This proposal has 2 defined terms, interest, and the definition of interest for purposes of this code tracks the definition of interest found in Article 18 of the New York General Municipal Law. And the other word that is defined is relative, because like love, relative is a word of many meanings. And so that is an area in which it is a matter of this board's discretion to decide how wide a net to cast or how narrow a net to cast. For example, well, what we have here is as the relatives that term refers to for purposes of this law is spouse, registered domestic partner, child, stepchild, dependent, parent, grandparent, step-parent, sibling, step-sibling, child-in-law, or parent-in-law. And as I said, there's concept in estate practice. They talk about degrees of consanguinity. Remember the movie 6 Degrees of Separation? That's consanguinity. It's how far out, for example, second cousins, third cousins, fourth cousins once removed. And an ethics code can go as far as you wish in defining the term relative. The first rule of conduct appears at 23-4, and that is use of town officers and employees are prohibited from using their public office to benefit themselves, certain relatives, household members, and entities with which they have some association, customers and clients from whom they've derived income of more than $1,000 during the previous 2 years, anyone who's given them a gift having a value of $500 or more during the past 12 months, and there's also a person or entity who made a contribution to their political committee in excess of $5,000 within the preceding 24 months. I might say that that provision regarding political contributions is not one that you typically see in local codes of ethics. That was requested at one point by someone in connection with this particular code. We don't prohibit campaign contributions. Campaign contributions are not gifts, as that term is used in ethics codes. Gifts are regulated by the Code of Ethics. Campaign contributions are regulated by the election law. There's a First Amendment component to campaign contributions. They're a form of political speech. So we don't regulate the contribution, but if you wish, you can regulate the participation of an elected official in a matter involving campaign contributors over a certain threshold within a certain discrete period of time. You don't have to. That is not a requirement of state law. Okay, recusal. When there's a conflict of interest, obviously an officer or employee must recuse themselves. Recusal means excluding yourself entirely from any participation in the matter. You don't try to persuade your colleagues that, as usual, you're right and they're wrong. They don't try to persuade you of the contrary. And you don't influence the outcome. At one time, I represented a homeowner in a town up in Westchester County who owned a parcel of land that was the size of 2 building lots. She wanted to partition her property, sell off the vacant lot, and continue to live in her house on the second lot. To do that, she needed the approval of the zoning board. Guess who the chairperson of the zoning board was? Her next door neighbor. And he wasn't keen on the idea of having a new house built next door. So he and his wife carried a petition around town collecting signatures opposed to the application. And on the evening that the application was heard, the chairperson announced that he was recusing himself, appropriate, got up off the dais, appropriate, to demonstrate, visually demonstrate his lack of participation. Then he sat in the front row next to his attorney, who argued on his behalf against the application. Now, clearly I can tell by the expressions on your face that you understand that changing your seat does not eliminate the conflict of interest. You may not do from the audience that which you are prohibited from doing from the dais. You may not do behind the scenes what you are prohibited from doing in public. If you have a conflict, you don't touch it. You have nothing to do with it.
What was the outcome?
The outcome was the board denied the request. And the applicant chose not to file an Article 78 petition. The 23-6 is, there was another case, by the way, that came out of the town of Clinton. I'll do this real quick. I don't want to take too much of your time. We can go on with stories all day. But a subdivision developer hired a member of the town board to be the general contractor on the subdivision project. They had a falling out, and it was over payments to subcontractors. The developer fired the town board member. And several months later, the developer was back before the board, asking the board to take ownership of the subdivision road and release his bond. And the town engineer said, don't do it. It's too soon. He hasn't completed the work. In order to complete the work, he's going to bring in heavy construction vehicles. They're going to tear up the road. If you take ownership now and release the bond, you'll own a road full of potholes with no bond to use to fix it. So with the town board member who had been fired recusing himself, the town board turned him down. What did the developer do? What does everybody do these days? He sued. And in his lawsuit, he said that the only reason the town board turned him down was because that town board member who he fired hates him. And the town attorney said, wait a second, Judge. Here's the transcript of the hearing. It says right here in black and white, I recuse myself. The developer said, Judge, we all know that's a lot of baloney, and that what really happened is behind the scenes, he badmouthed me to his colleagues and got them to vote against me. The judge said, we don't know what actually happened here because we haven't had the trial yet. That's when we'll hear the testimony, we'll take the proof, we'll find out what happened. But if the developer is able to prove what he said happened, did happen, he'll win. So that case demonstrates, in my view, stands for the proposition that if you have a conflict of interest and as a result have to recuse yourself, you can't have anything, you can't influence the outcome. So 23-6 contains some exceptions, situations in which you do not have to recuse yourself. For example, adoption of the town budget. Anyone who receives a salary, including members of this board, has an interest in the town budget, and yet that does not preclude this board from adopting the budget. For one thing, the town, for one reason is the rule of necessity. the town must have a budget, and there's no one else to whom this board can lawfully delegate the authority to adopt the budget. Any matter that is ministerial acts do not require the exercise of judgment and discretion. If you're a deputy clerk in the clerk's office, and your responsibilities include at one point in the day standing at the counter, and when someone brings in a document to file, you take it, date stamp it, and put it in the in basket. In walks your son. You take your son's paper, date stamp it, and put it in the in basket. That is not a prohibited conflict of interest, because doing that act does not require the exercise of judgment and discretion. The reason conflicts of interest are prohibited is because they tend to undermine the independent exercise of judgment and discretion. Acts that affect a large number of similarly situated residents or taxpayers or employees in the same way that they affect you is not a prohibited conflict of interest. For example, again, forgive me, I'm going to pick on this board because it's such an easy, its authority is so vast that it makes it easy. If you were to choose to rezone a very large portion of the town, and that rezoning would increase the value of homes in that portion of the town, and your homes were there, that would not be a prohibited conflict of interest, because a prohibited conflict of interest is one that's personal or private to you. It's not one that you share with a large number of others. Of course, it would be an entirely different case if you were to decide to just spot rezone your own homes, something you, of course, would never do. But that would be a prohibited conflict.
And this, of course, would be done with public hearings, with
Yes.
votes in public,
That's right.
in the public space. I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah, so all of that would be theoretically known to everyone in
Yes.
the world.
Right. So, let's see. All right, well, there are a few other practical situations in which recusal is not required. Prohibited interests in contracts. This is the core provision of Article 18 of the New York General Municipal Law. If you are a person who has the power or duty, either individually or as a member of a body, to approve town contracts, to audit bills rendered under the contract, to approve payment, to hire or fire anyone who has the power or duty to do any of those things, you may not have an interest in the town contract, and the contract is prohibited. That is Section 801 of the General Municipal Law, and we've incorporated it here. There are some exceptions, which I won't take your time to go into now. 23-8 is investments in conflict with official duties. 23-9 is employment in conflict. The rule having to do with secondary employment and owning a business, a private outside business, they're really the same. And the rule comes from a Court of Appeals decision rendered, believe it or not, in 1874. The rule is this: in the absence of a constitutional or statutory prohibition, in other words, if there's no law against it, you can hold two positions, whether they be two government positions or a government position and a position of outside employment, provided that the two positions are not inherently incompatible. The way you tell whether two positions are inherently incompatible is you compare their duties. The classic example of two incompatible positions is chief financial officer on the one hand and auditor on the other. You can see how the responsibilities of those two are incompatible. It's sometimes said you can't be your own boss, and that principle is incorporated in these sections of the code. Future employment. A town officer or employee may not seek or accept private post-government employment with any person or organization that has a matter pending before them or their board, department, or agency, or for 30 days afterwards. 30 days is not a magic number. It's just a compromise between on the one hand, wanting to have some reasonable cooling off period, and on the other hand, not preventing people from seeking gainful employment for too long a period of time. Then there are two post-employment limitations. The first is temporary. It lasts for 1 year. It's the revolving door provision. For 1 year, you may not appear before your former board, department, or agency. The reason for that rule is so that the public is not given the impression that a former employee of the town will have some advantage over other members of the public in dealing with their former colleagues. So there's a 1 year cooling off period. The permanent ban is that at no time after you leave town government may you handle a matter on behalf of a private employer if you handle that same matter while you're employed by the town. It's a particular matter ban, and that's permanent.
Now, the 1 year cooling off, that's in our code currently.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Is it 1 year in our
Yes.
code? Yeah, okay. Some municipalities have a 2 year cooling off period. I think 1 year is adequate. The section 23-11 on independent contractors simply says, the current code prohibits independent contractors from representing others independent contractors of the town from representing other clients before the town. And, of course, you are the governing body, so it's your judgment that counts, not mine. But I think that's overly restrictive, because there could be situations in which representing another party before the town does give rise to a conflict of interest, and there could be situations when it does not. What this provision says is that an independent contractor of the town may not use undue influence, undue access to gain an advantage for another customer or client. So provided everybody's acting in the same way that anyone else who does not have the independent contractor relationship with the town would be able to act, that's permitted under this proposal.
So we would no longer have to issue them, like right now we don't have to do that anymore if we adopt this
Right, so
code?
right now, our current code, we put in the town board resolution authorizing a contract, a waiver as it relates to the existing provision in the ethics code. There's an exemption for those that, independent contractors that are local and are having a contract for less than, I believe, 25,000 with the town. But some of your consultants have a little, contracts that are more than that, so we put that in each town board resolution pursuant to your ethics code, so you wouldn't have to.
And
do
the
that.
waiver, it kind of, we've had an issue with that just because why would you want to give anybody a waiver to your ethics code,
Right.
and
Sure.
it's.
Sure.
That basically a consultant, like a, consultant, what we
Like
use.
H2M.
For the
or-
Tiana Beach one today, had it.
Yeah,
Okay, McLean,
Yeah.
they do private stuff too.
yeah, and also like,
We give them
Yeah.
out routinely.
This conversation, by
that's
the
what I'm
way,
trying to say nicely.
this conversation is exactly why this is such a valuable exercise, because you work with a code of ethics or any other regulation for a period of time, you start to understand where the problems are, where it might be improved upon.
But I think doing this as an exercise as a whole is a good thing, because I know there are things that I've had conversation with Kathleen about, and you don't really want to be the legislator that says, you know what, let's lighten up the ethics
Yes.
code, but at the same time, some of our stuff doesn't make present day sense.
Right, the Article 18 of the New York General Municipal Law was adopted in 1969. There have been efforts over the years by bar associations, municipal groups, good government groups to reform it, improve it, modernize it. Those efforts have always failed, for the reason that on the one hand, elected officials often are fearful that their political opponents are going to use an ethics code as a club to beat them over the head with. It's a reasonable concern. And on the other hand, the perception that, the idea that they don't want to be perceived as diluting the code, exactly as you said. So it's a double whammy, and it results in paralysis. And that's why it's good. I agree with you. Also, when you respond to a scandal, which has never occurred in this town for as long as I've been involved with it, but if you respond to a scandal with an ethics reform, usually that reform is narrow and it's an overreaction. It's better to do a comprehensive review of the code when you're not responding to some particular problem, and you have the ability to review it calmly and carefully. So, okay, I'm sure I'm taking more time than
You're
I
fine,
should-
we have plenty of time.
good, okay. Use of town resources, that's 23-13. You know, this is a situation which people do get themselves into trouble. The use of town resources includes, of course, compensated town time. People have been prosecuted for clocking in and then going off and doing their personal business. People are issued town vehicles. People are have access to computer systems and telephone systems and town hall. They shouldn't be conducting their personal business here. And there are other ways in which people can use, can inappropriately use town resources, and it can range from small, petty circumstances that can be corrected with some kind of personnel action to something that might amount to larceny, theft of either time or property. At the same time, we have to be reasonable. If someone is asked to work late and they need to call and arrange babysitting and they pick up the town telephone, that should not be a problem. If someone is issued a town vehicle, and if, I'm not sure this is the case in this town, but if they're permitted to take that vehicle home at night and bring it back the next morning, and they stop to pick up a quart of milk on the way home, that should not be a problem. That is just a reasonable, minimal use of a town resource that's a function of the fact that they're a human being just like, and have human needs just like everyone else. So we want to be balanced in the way that we police this provision.
Doesn't matter. Our town vehicles have special plates, and, you know, some of them have even decals on the side. you
Sure.
know, but folks will use them. you
Right.
know, And, I mean, it's part of their contracts, so
Yeah.
that is okay.
Well, they should not, I wouldn't want to see someone take a town vehicle on vacation. But stopping at a 7-Eleven or a dairy barn on your way home from work, that's okay, in my view.
A lot of them have GPS in them too.
Right.
trackers.
Sure, yep,
Because we can know that they sit at McDonald's for 45 minutes.
Right.
idling.
right. I've heard that the cost of a meal at McDonald's has gotten pretty high these days,
Yeah.
like everything else. So nepotism. You know, we live in a post-feminist world. I don't know what the statistics are these days, but I would bet that most households have 2 breadwinners these days. It should come as no surprise that 2 members of the same family might have the same circle of contacts, the same background, might even wind up employed by the same municipality. I don't view that as a problem. The problem arises if one family member has the authority to hire or fire the other, set their salaries, assign them work, evaluate their work, give them promotions or demotions or discipline. And so the code requires recusal under those circumstances. It prohibits direct supervision. And the reason it prohibits direct supervision, I just want to make sure that that word does, that I'm saying this accurately. Well, actually, it doesn't use the word directly, I see here. The question sometimes arises, what if a department head is related to somebody who works in the department? My answer to that question is generally, it depends. Is it a large department with layers of management, perhaps multiple locations, and where it really is possible for the department head to effectively recuse himself or herself from making decisions about the terms of employment of the relative? Or is it a tiny little office where inevitably everyone's in each other's business and an effective recusal is impossible? Those are two different factual scenarios with different results in each case. Political solicitations. What is prohibited here, none of us was born yesterday. We all know that people who rise to levels of responsibility in government tend to also hold positions of responsibility in political parties. Inevitably, the fundraising letters go out because funds are the lifeblood of politics these days. So what are we trying to achieve here? We don't want employees of the town to be coerced into making political contributions or engaging in political activities against their will. This is not a novel provision. It also appears in the election law and it appears in the civil service law. It's that degree of coercion. It's the threats, the lack of voluntariness that is prohibited. The same is true of making personnel decisions based upon political considerations, which is not unique to this code. It also appears, again, as I said, in the civil service law and elsewhere in the law. Confidential information is, in my view, the worst provision of all in the world of ethics regulations. And the reason I say that is, what do we mean in the government setting? What do we mean by confidential information? The state law that prohibits the unauthorized use of confidential information doesn't do us the favor of telling us. So we have developed a definition of confidential information for the purposes of this town, of this code. Over the past, half a century, I guess now, with the adoption of the Freedom of Information Act by the federal government, followed by the Freedom of Information Law by the state government, the Open Meetings Law, we have developed a belief that openness and transparency in government are essential in a democracy. Because after all, without the ability to know what their government is doing, the constituents can't hold their government officials accountable. So given that fundamental value that we place on openness and transparency, what can we possibly mean by confidential information? Well, this code defines it with a two-pronged definition. The first prong is information that is prohibited from disclosure by either federal or state law. And the second prong is information that the town has the discretion under either the Freedom of Information Law or the Open Meetings Law to withhold from public disclosure, and that the town has lawfully exercised that discretion. Because, sometimes the town withholds something thinking that they're authorized to do so, but somebody files an Article 78 and they prevail. The judge says, no, you made a mistake. The public should have had access to this. So it's information that is prohibited from law, from disclosure on the one hand, or on the other hand, that the town has lawfully exercised the discretion afforded to it under those laws to withhold. Gifts, tips, and other benefits. This is another area in which the state law is really unhelpful. The definition of the rule, I'll tell you what the rule regarding gifts is in Article 18 of the General Municipal Law, and we've incorporated it here for the reasons that I said at the outset, but then we've added a further definition. Article 18 says that you may not solicit a gift of any amount or accept a gift having a value of $75 or more under circumstances where it may appear that the gift was intended to influence or reward an official act. The reason that is an unhelpful definition is it doesn't provide adequate guidance about what gifts are prohibited. How can you tell what it might appear to one person was intended by another person? So while we incorporate that decision, we also provide that no town officer or employee shall you can't solicit a gift from someone who has derived a financial benefit from the town within the past 2 years. If you're going to ask for the gift, you have the burden first of investigating to determine whether they've received a benefit from the town during the past 2 years. If you're not asking for the gift, if it's offered to you unsolicited, then you may not accept a gift having a value of $75 or more if you know that the person received a financial benefit from the town within the past two years, but you have no duty to investigate. And of course, there's an exception for gifts from sources that would be normal and obvious: family members, personal friends. There are other reasonable exceptions, mostly borrowed from the Lobbying Act, the New York State lobbying law. Gifts of nominal value, birthday gifts, and so forth. The code also codifies something that really is in the penal law. Everybody knows about bribery. Bribery is a corrupt deal. I offer to give you something of value in exchange for which you promise to take some official action that I want, or refrain from some official action that I don't want. We're both guilty of a crime, and the crime is either a misdemeanor or a felony, depending upon the value of the gift given and the degree of misconduct involved. But so bribery is a corrupt deal made in advance. But there's a lesser crime that doesn't involve a deal having been made in advance. It's the crime of giving or receiving an unlawful gratuity. And that crime, a misdemeanor, is committed if a gift of any value, there's no $75 threshold, a gift of any value is given or received is given or received as a reward for some official act for which the officer or employee was not entitled to additional compensation. In a nutshell, there is no tipping in government, and that is codified in this proposal. Inducement of an officer or employee to violate the code of ethics is itself a violation of the code of ethics. And then we get to the article having to do with disclosure. Disclosure is required when you have a conflict of interest. That's particular matter disclosure, and I'm sure you all do that all the time. A matter will come before you in which you're going to recuse yourself. So you announce, I'm recusing myself, and recusal is always coupled by a disclosure. You give the reason why. It doesn't have to be a detailed explanation. It just has to be a basic statement of the reason why you're recusing yourself. And consistent with state law, any applicant in a land use application is required to disclose the identity of any officer or employee of the state or of a local municipality who has an interest in the applicant. That disclosure is required. It's a misdemeanor to fail to do so, and I'm sure that question appears in your application forms for land use applications. Disclosure is also required of any interest that an officer or employee of the town has in a town contract. Even though there is a certain limited type of town contract that is prohibited because someone with authority over the contract has an interest in it, that's prohibited. Other contracts on the part of officers and employees, other town contracts, are not prohibited, and in those instances, disclosure is required. And then we get into annual financial disclosure. As you know, any municipality having a population of 50,000 or more is required to have an annual financial disclosure program. One of the unique things about this Board of Ethics is that they conscientiously and diligently review those forms. At every meeting of the Board of Ethics, Kathleen brings a stack of disclosure forms, and they're dealt out like cards at a card game, and we review them and note where an inquiry might be required.
Did you review our form to see if it needs any upgrades?
Yes, there is a proposed form at the, in this agreement, in this proposal. It starts on page 29. And we'll talk about that in a moment. The Board of Ethics, this town has had, as I said, an excellent, conscientious Board of Ethics for many years, and I'm sure it will continue to do so. This code provides that no member of the Board of Ethics shall otherwise be an officer or employee of the town. That is a deviation from Article 18. Article 18 provides that one member of the Board of Ethics shall be an officer or employee of the town. But using home rule authority, that provision should that provision should be altered. And the reason for that is you want people to be comfortable in going to the Board of Ethics for ethics advice. You want them to be convinced that their requests will be confidential and that the advice rendered will be confidential. So we have the assistance of Kathleen, who is liaison to the Board of Ethics. I'm the board's independent counsel. Kathleen serves as the liaison. And there have been occasions over the years when Kathleen has recused herself in a matter that's come before the board and, you know, stepped out of the meeting so that the board can discuss something outside of her presence. And I have found in my experience in those municipalities where they've, for example, designated the town attorney to be a member of the Board of Ethics, it becomes a Board of Ethics of one. You know, the authority and influence of the town attorney is so overwhelming to the other board members that basically, you know, you have a one-person board. So that's to be avoided.
So this is a change, this addition of that language, and it would be different from what we have now?
Functionally, in all the years, I think once upon a time there was someone from Human Resources that was on the board.
And the police department.
And the police department, yes. But for quite a few years, that has not been the case. So yes, this is a deviation in the law, although it's not a deviation in practice in recent years. The Board of Ethics has the authority to render advice, to investigate complaints, to administer the financial disclosure program, to conduct training, to promulgate educational materials. It does all of those things. It also has the authority to impose penalties of up to $10,000. We have also eliminated the requirement that complaints to the Board of Ethics be signed and notarized. In my view, that is a very unhelpful provision. Advice is rendered only to an officer or employee of the town inquiring about themselves or someone they supervise. But we should entertain complaints from anyone, whatever the source. And their motivation for making the complaint is irrelevant. They can be, you know, they can be someone with an axe to grind who is just out to get someone and is, you know, they can be politically motivated. It doesn't matter. The question for the Board of Ethics is whether the complaint has merit, whether an ethics violation has occurred. Now, the downside, so for that reason, we even accept anonymous complaints. But the downside of accepting an anonymous complaint is if the person, often the person doesn't provide enough information to enable the board to investigate and determine whether there's something worth investigating. And if the complaint is anonymous, you can't go back to that person for more information. So they take that risk. And as I said, we've designed a complaint form that can be posted on the website, along with a form for requesting ethics advice, in which pertinent information is requested. Let's see. The current code does not authorize the Board of Ethics to impose any penalty at all, any financial penalty at all. It authorizes the board to make a recommendation to the town board that the town board impose a fine not to exceed $1,500. Now, I have heard that there are residents of this town for whom $1,500 is not a prohibitive penalty. We want the board to be authorized to impose penalties that are sufficient to discourage violations of the code. And really, in all of the years that I've been associated with the Board of Ethics, I don't believe that we've ever found anyone to be in violation of the code, except for failure to file a financial disclosure statement. And in those instances, the offender has resigned rather than file. So really, what the power to impose the penalty amounts to is the ability to persuade someone to comply. If someone, for example, fails to file a disclosure statement and they get a first gentle reminder, and they get a second less gentle reminder, and they get a third letter saying your failure to file the disclosure form may result in the imposition of a penalty of up to $10,000, it gets people's attention. So that really is the value of an authorized penalty at that level.
Mm-hmm.
The Board of Ethics has the authority to grant waivers of most, but not all, of the provisions in the Code of Conduct. There are certain provisions, such as the ones mandated by Article 18, that the board can't waive.
What
And-
kind of, sorry,
Sure.
what kind of when you guys say investigation, what kind of investigatory powers does the ethics board have? I.e., do they have the power of subpoena? Do they have those?
Well, generally what we would do is invite witnesses to come in and meet with the board, and if there's a formal complaint, testify before the board. We would conduct a hearing. The CPR does give administrative bodies subpoena power. In order to enforce the subpoena, of course, they need a court order. And I imagine, without knowing for sure, that the town attorney's office has subpoena power. And if in an appropriate circumstance, the Board of Ethics could seek the assistance of the town attorney's office. Am I right about that? Does the,
I don't know.
Okay.
We've never exercised that power.
Right. Okay. In any event, the board would have the legal means of enforcing attendance in the rare and unlikely circumstance that would be
I only
necessary.
ask because I know other board members in the past have raised that issue, series of boards away, but.
Right. So let me say a few words about the financial disclosure form, and then I'll stop torturing you.
Not torture.
Okay, thank you. In 1987, the state adopted the financial disclosure requirement. In the law enacted by the state legislature, there was a form incorporated right in the law. The form was horrible. It was invasive, and it was difficult, and it was long, and you needed an army of forensic accountants to assist you in completing it. So the town of, I have to always think, because I get Chappaqua and Chautauqua confused, is Chautauqua. The town of Chautauqua developed a kinder, gentler form, and they submitted it to the Temporary State Commission on Local Government Ethics, which existed at the time and has since sunset out of existence. But they asked the Temporary State Commission on Local Government Ethics to take a look at their form and opine on whether that would meet the minimum requirements of the law. And the Temporary State Commission tinkered with it a little bit and said, as modified, yes, it would. And so this form is based largely on that kinder, gentler form approved by the Temporary State Commission. By the way, there were those who speculated that the reason that disclosure form in the state law was so bad was to discourage challengers from challenging incumbents. There is one recent modification that I've made to this document after the scandals involving a couple of years ago involving the Speaker of the Assembly and the presiding officer of the State Senate. I added a question about clients and customers doing business with the town. It's based in part on changes that the state, I think at that time it was the State Ethics Commission, made to their disclosure form. State Ethics Commission was replaced by JCOPE, the Joint Commission on Public Ethics. JCOPE was replaced by the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government. And recently, as a result of a lawsuit brought by former Governor Cuomo, that agency has been stripped of its enforcement powers, at least unless and until that decision is reversed on appeal or the legislature replaces the agency with another one. So the state has had a tough time of having an effective, consistent, ongoing ethics program nearly as good as this town's. And I'll say that to the State Comptroller's office any day.
Say that again?
I'll say that to the State Comptroller's office any day.
Well, you're in a public meeting now.
So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'd be happy to, have anyone who wishes to do so call me if you find that to be convenient. Whatever assistance I can provide to you, I'm happy to provide. I think it would be a really nice thing if the town was to finally update its ethics code, and we really very, very much need to renew our ethics training program. That's very important. And if we can coordinate with IT and develop an improved website, that would be great. And finally, the booklet would be a helpful thing also.
All good recommendations, thank you.
Thank you.
Good,
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, I'm comfortable with all the recommendations, so if you don't have any questions, we could always schedule a public hearing on the code change.
Great.
I'd like to review it and just kind of,
Yeah, of course. Take some time to look at it.
not a lot of time, but now with the input, it's nice to go back and reread with.
Sure, yeah. I remember at one time, years ago, looking at ethics codes for municipalities around the area, and I took a look at the ethics code for a town on the North Fork and discovered that they had raised the threshold for prohibited gifts from the $75 threshold that appears in Article 18 of the General Municipal Law to $100 or $150 or whatever the number was.
Preempted.
You can't do that. You
Yeah.
can't do that. If Article 18 prohibits the conduct, you can't allow it. You can prohibit conduct that Article 18 would allow. You can't allow conduct that Article 18 prohibits. So,
That was a number of years ago.
yes, it was. It was. So,
Well, I thank you for coming in and speaking with
Thank
us
you.
today.
thank you for hearing me.
So we'll let you know if we have any questions about this, and if not, we'll proceed with the hearing and
Excellent. And I'd be happy if you wish to make a presentation at the hearing, if that would be helpful.
I think we should at least be here, yeah, make a brief presentation and be here in case anybody from the community has any questions.
Great, excellent. Okay, thank you.
All right,
Thank you
we'll
all.
be in touch, we'll let you
Thank
know.
you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any updates they want to share, any information before we close?
Not at this time.
All
No,
right,
it's
then I move to close the meeting.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.